All right, we're back for another Friday Financial Wrap with Mr. Michael Zuber. How are you, Michael?
I'm doing well, man. First and foremost, for all you stock investors out there, congratulations. You will not be losing money today. The stock market is closed for Good Friday, I believe. So there you go. So stock market closed.
Stock market closed. Good Friday. Happy Easter weekend. This is live. We are live right now. This is for April the 18th, 2025. Let's get right into the show, man. Zillow. What happened this week and what is your take?
Yeah, Zillow did something that I thought was unthinkable, right? Obviously, we don't know Zillow. They are, typically a housing bull. And Zillow has gone negative on housing for 2025. They now believe that 2025 will produce a negative number on home prices. I believe their current prediction is negative 1.7. I actually think the story is bigger than that, and I think a lot of people are missing it. Zillow's first call on 2025, I believe, was done in September or October of 24. And at that point, they were calling for just over 5% increase
Yeah.
for 2025. And subsequently, over multiple revisions, now I think this is their third or fourth, every revision has been lower. So not only has Zillow gone negative, but their trend is frankly one direction. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that changes, but maybe next time Zillow comes out and says it's negative 3% or something. So I don't know what's going on in the Zillow data, but yeah, they did the unthinkable, right? Zillow is now negative 1.7. I'm not sure if that qualifies as a crash, but I expect a lot of crash bros to jump on this, to use that headline and tell a story of woe. But there's no question. There's more inventory. There's less demand. There's the economy, consumer confidence, investor confidence, CEO confidence. Everybody is just in a mess right now, and that does not bode well for housing. So it could get worse from here for sure.
So just to be really clear, is what Michael's talking about 1.6, 1.67. You're
Uh-huh.
specifically talking about property value decline. So let's just say
Correct.
national median is about what,
I don't know, call it 400 for easy math. So they're
400?
saying it's going to go to 392 or 393. But yeah, Zillow's saying that national home prices will be negative in 2025.
So question though. So this is a good question because you mentioned the crash bros.
Mhm.
What qualifies to Michael Zuber or on a national level of a real estate crash? How much movement would have to happen in a year or in a period or in a cycle in order to quote unquote qualify as a market crash?
So I'm glad you asked that. You asked year in cycle because I think that's an important differentiation. So inside of a year, the largest drop we have seen, my belief, is 9.1% at the epicenter of the Great Recession.
Yep.
So let's call a crash in a 12-month period anything greater than 5%.
Okay.
However, again, what I think a lot of crash bros miss is housing is a lot slower than everybody expects. So I think the bigger question is duration.
Yeah.
So if you put together, like we did in the GFC, 4 or 5 negative years in a row, and we go double digits, anything more than 10%, like over a multiple year period, I would also call a crash. So if you want a year metric, let's go 5. And if you want multiple years in a row, let's go 10, just so we have a definition.
Got it. Got it. Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. Let's keep going with I'm going to keep going with the show notes. Let's talk about Redfin. What happened with Redfin this week and your take?
Well, Redfin really called it out. Redfin also went negative on U.S. housing. Frankly, Redfin went negative on the U.S. economy. Redfin put out a report yesterday talking about 24% of Americans are canceling or delaying major purchases, right? So when you think about the daily financial news, that could be homes, that could be cars, that could also be durable goods, right? Durable goods come in at 3 years or longer average age. So basically, consumers are putting their wallet in their back pocket, sitting down. They're not participating. There was some uptick at the end of Q1, which will definitely distort Q1 numbers around autos and big purchases as people pulled forward demand to beat tariffs. I think that's going to greatly distort the truth and going to create significant air pockets in Q2 because you can't, that demand once done is not replaced, right? It's just done early. And yeah, I think Redfin and Zillow are very negative. We've got obviously high prices, high rates going up, not down. We now have an economy that is sputtering. We have an employment base that appears strong, but everybody's nervous. We have small companies that maybe relied on imports that are now months away from bankruptcy. It's not a pretty picture, right? Earlier, right, we talked about the beginning of the year, the first 6 months being chaotic. Again, that call looks awesome right now, but I just want everybody to know I had no idea it'd be this chaotic, right? This is chaotic squared. And not getting better, right? We got no certainty this week. Last week we said the word of the year is uncertainty. It didn't get a whole lot better this week. In fact, some might say it might got worse. So it's kind of crazy.
Even with the pause, Trump paused the tariffs, and there's this like 90-day pause, but it didn't feel like the market
Yeah,
moved in a good direction, or there was no real good news this week, right?
yeah, there were no wins, right? Hey, Vietnam did X, Israel did Y, India did Z. I mean, there was no wins. Maybe they're stacking them. I have no idea. Trade deals are crazy hard. I don't, thinking they'd be done in a week is unrealistic. But the wins are not showing up yet, and we need to start posting wins so that we kind of feel better about, detoxing. Right? It's there's pain first, and it gets better later. We need a win or two so that we can feel like the pain is worth it. Because right now, negativity is winning, uncertainty is winning, and that has a problem with consumers because consumers can spiral out of control. Right? It's not good right now.
And I want to hit something you said. You said that even you had talked about this for months. Hey, it's going to be chaotic. The
Yep.
first 90 days, the first 180 days is
Yep.
going to be very chaotic. A lot of uncertainty, a lot of uncertainty. That has been the theme of this show for months and months, even before the beginning of the new year. But you're saying, just to be really clear that I heard you right, this is a lot worse than what even you anticipated of chaos. Is that accurate?
No, absolutely right. I think up until Liberation Day, the chaos was kind of exactly what I expected. It's like, yeah, this kind of feels like where we were going. Then we had Liberation Day. And actually, the start of Liberation Day wasn't that bad either. We talked about a 10% tariff across the world, which is kind of where I was at. But then they brought up that stupid chart saying, 49% here and 89% there. And I'm like, oh my God, what? This math doesn't tie. Those aren't tariffs. You guys are doing crazy math. And the story just got wonky. That's when this thing got chaotic squared or cubed even. And, the messaging may have been lost.
Okay. I'm going to ask you two questions about recession at the very end. So folks, stay to the very end. I want to hit Michael with that. It's not in our show notes, but I am going to hit him about recession, depression, 2008 comparison. I want to really get your insight on this week. Let's talk about Jerome Powell. Jerome Powell this week, he was in Chicago. What was your take on Jerome Powell?
Well, again, this was kind of the point that the week became even worse, right? Jerome Powell went out, I think, on Wednesday and basically told the world, aka also President Trump, that they are not coming to the rescue. They will not be cutting rates. The risk to inflation is higher, not lower. They have, risk of higher prices. They have risk of lower growth. And basically Powell, if you want to think like a child, gave the middle finger to President Trump. And as expected, President Trump did not like that and came out and did what he does and says that he's late and he's horrible at it. And, the war of words between Powell and Trump escalated this week. Back to my point earlier, this week got less certain than, I would hope for. I would hope we start trending in the right direction. But it's very clear that the battle between Powell and Trump is heating up, ratcheting up. And, I suspect, looking at the chessboard today, it would not shock me. Because, again, something else that happened this week, and I think this was on Tuesday, Scott Bessent said they'd start interviewing Fed presidents shortly, right? They basically want to get the nominee known. And I really think there is something to the fact that President Trump will not fire Powell, but he will neuter him. And how do you neuter the Fed chair? You basically pick his replacement because Powell is out in May of 26. So if
Yeah.
you pick Powell's replacement in, say, September of
Yeah.
25, then what you do is you parade this individual around on all the national broadcasts every single day, second guessing and armchair quarterbacking Jerome Powell. And that's going to get obnoxious.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it's going to be, but that's, I think, what they're going to do.
Yeah. It was very interesting. I did watch parts of the live interview on CNBC, watching Fed Chairman Powell and the interview. And one of the things they really emphasize is that he cannot be fired, or at least under the current set of rules, that he can't be fired. So, very interesting though that to get a replacement and then just lots of tweets, lots of media coverage, and
Yeah,
just
they're gonna
basically
neuter him. They're gonna make his job increasingly uncomfortable, which is actually a pretty tactical. If you want to play tactics, a pretty genius move,
finger
right? Then
pointing, right? Like, hey, it's not us,
yeah,
it's
well,
him.
it's even worse, right? You basically say the guy in charge is doing his job wrong or doing this or that wrong, and he's going to be asked every time about the other guy, and it's just at some point Powell probably gets to the point and just says, "I quit. Give it to the new guy."
Resign.
I mean, that's probably the chessboard out there, because the other thing, let's be very clear. I know there's lots of people that want Powell fired. Maybe they call him a buffoon or whatever you want, but let's be clear. Let's be very, very clear. If Trump pulled that trigger, the bond market would lose their mind. And you thought the temper tantrum of the 10 and 30-year note last week or the week before was nuts. The 10-year note might jump to 5.5% or 6%. The bond market is the boss of the house, and they would not like that. Rates would shoot dramatically higher. So be careful what you wish for.
Very interesting. Let's comment also in the show notes the Fed. Just anything else, we talked about Jerome Powell.
Yeah,
Let's talk
the
about the
Fed. So
Fed
let's go to
specific.
yeah. So the Fed is a 19-member thing where Jerome Powell is one of the voices. He's the main voice, but there are 18 other members. All of them are basically saying the risk is to the upside. They've gone on to say things like tariffs were bigger than expected. Inflation expectations. Pretty much all of the Fed presidents, and I think there were 8 or 9 of them that spoke last week, are basically saying the same thing. The risk is to the upside. We're in a good place. We're not cutting. I haven't checked recently, but the odds of a May cut to start the week were about 15%. I would guess after all of the Fed speak this week, that has to be lower, because they're basically saying we're not cutting in May, right? No, not enough time. So that's what the Fed did, right? There's a Powell piece of this, and then there's the bigger Fed story. And the story of the 18 Fed presidents, in my opinion, is we're not cutting in May.
Is there a possible Fed error here? Is this the right thing to
Yeah.
do, or what is your take on it?
Yeah, I think there is an error brewing. I understand that the natural reaction to tariffs are to see higher prices. I mean, I'm not an idiot, right? That's just math. However, when you look at the economy and consumer behavior, I believe what is going to transpire with these tariffs is actually demand destruction and then deflation. So yes, we may get an artificial bump in inflation that is, I can't believe I'm going to say this word. I can't believe I'm going to say this. Transitory. It's a couple of months, because right when it comes in, it's felt, prices raised, yada yada yada. But then the consumers do what they're doing right now, and they just revolt. Right? Redfin said earlier, 24% of the folks aren't playing. That number is going to go up, not down. So what will happen is you get that little transitory. I can't believe I'm saying that word. Transitory bump. And then you get demand destruction, and then you get suppliers, sellers lowering prices, putting stuff on sale, buy 2, get 3 free, because they have to move inventory.
Right.
So I think the daisy chain of events, and quite possibly a nasty error by the Fed, is we might be staring deflation in the face come August, September, and that's not good. So yeah.
So this economy is going to potentially have the makings to have that kind of a wild swing of literally talk
It's
about
stagflation. That's what it is. It's stagflation.
stagflation. Talk about you mentioned, so you talk about deflation, you talk about destruction, demand
Mhm.
destruction. Just explain that, because I don't think we've talked a lot. I have an idea, but
Yeah.
for the viewer, the listener.
When you look at the economy, again, there are three legs of the stool: government, private business, private enterprise, and the consumer. We're talking here really about the consumer, but it actually plays in the other two segments as well. And consumers are frankly predictable, right? They typically move in mass. Their weight and might, given their size, right, 68% of the economy, can change the economy overnight. And right now, we have gone from a Trump bump in January, December, January, whatever, where the majority were feeling good and investments were being made and blah 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 blah, to something the reverse of that. The negativity in the economy right now is heading in the wrong direction, and that loop feeds on itself, right? And more people will simply stop participating. They will stop making discretionary decisions. They will stop taking vacations. They will stop buying cars. They will stop buying furniture. They will stop going out. They will, they will, they will hurt the economy. And then again, the other thing we got to remember is recessions are a natural part of the economy, right? The fact that we've had bailouts and V-shaped recoveries the last, several times. That's not normal, right? I think there's a lot of people that are used to that. It's not normal. But yeah, this demand destruction is real, and I do believe more and more consumers are going to simply refuse to participate, and they're going to save their pennies, and that's going to hurt the overall economy.
Very interesting. Let's talk about Nixon. I see Nixon here in my notes, and
Yeah.
w- tell us about
Yeah.
Nixon.
Yeah, one of the things I try to do with our audience is educate them or give them some history lessons when possible. There's a lot of folks that stay in the headlines and don't realize we have seen similar situations before. So again, we talked earlier about the battle between President Trump and Fed Chairman Powell. I just want people to realize this happens before. In fact, you can go back and look at the history of President Nixon and Fed President Arthur Burns. There is evidence that Nixon basically bullied Arthur Burns into cutting rates in the early '80s, or maybe it was the late '70s, which unfortunately unleashed a second round of inflation. That second round of inflation caused Arthur Burns to go away and Paul Volcker to come in. And basically, Paul Volcker ripped rates higher and caused a very nasty and painful recession. Two recessions back to back. And again, the '82 recession is one that I remember as a kid hurting extremely bad. And so again, we have had presidents and Fed chairs disagree. Obviously, I think most presidents would want lower rates, and the Fed, has this dual mandate that we talk about all the time. So it's not uncommon that they disagree. I just want people to realize, if you want to study history, go back and look at President Nixon and Arthur Burns, see how Nixon beat up Arthur Burns to get his way, and then see what happened after. I'm not saying that's going to happen this time. I'm just saying sometimes we should study history to at
Yeah,
least see what's possible.
yeah. So let's talk about recession.
Mhm. It feels I'll say it this way. I don't know how you don't have a recession starting in Q2.
Yeah.
I just don't I
So
don't
Q2 and Q3 basically
yeah,
get our 2 quarters of.
yeah. Q2 for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I just don't know how you don't do it. I mean, when you have the government spending less, you have private enterprise spending less, and you have consumers spending less. There's nobody else left, right? I don't
Consumers are scared. I mean, consumers are like, I've never seen this much fear. Even 2008,
No, it wasn't
people,
this bad. Wasn't
it
this
was
bad.
melting down, but people were not fearful like this. The
No.
uncertainty and the fear, this
No, it was
is
nothing like this. This
nothing
is
like
this
it.
is this, because again, I lived through '08. I lived through the dot-com. '08 was very much kind of the finance bros, right? If you were in that pocket, if you were in mortgage, if you were anywhere in Wall Street, that you've certainly felt it. But the overall economy, it didn't really get bad until like '09 and '10, when foreclosures really ratcheted up, right? When
Yeah.
Lehman Brothers went bust, That wasn't the event for the public, right? Main Street. This is very much Main Street, man. Everybody I talk to is scared.
Yep.
Everybody. It's
Yep.
it's not good.
Not good. So let me ask you. You talked about history. You talked about
Mm-hmm.
the 80s, 81, 82.
Mm-hmm.
Um, does this feel worse than? Does this feel like on the same level of? Are we going to see layoffs? How does the demand destruction? You laid down a lot today, and I
Mm-hmm.
think too. I was with you on Wednesday. We did something else. If you folks go watch Joe D,
It's coming today.
it's
It's coming
coming
today.
later today. You'll see it on the YouTube channel at one rental at a time. Um, this is our second time talking this week. We talked for an
Mm-hmm.
hour on Wednesday.
Yep.
This feels like, oh
No,
shit.
yeah, this is definitely a moment where you should wake up, right? You should pay attention. Don't do anything stupid. But is it 82 yet? Absolutely not. I mean, let's be
Okay.
real. We have 4.2% unemployment. We've got inflation going down, not up. Um, this is a moment. It's kind of like you're on a path, and there's two choices. We're at that choice. It could head towards 82, and frankly, be worse. But also, let's be clear: if we start posting wins and we start seeing better things for the detox, it could end up in a much better place. But we are at that fork in a road where I don't know, dude. Maybe the next couple of weeks, we might end up in a path that's much better. Like we're feeling okay,
Yep.
or oh shit, this is not good.
Pay attention.
Pay attention.
Wake up, pay attention. Wake up, pay attention. Okay. Let's keep going. So let's talk about one of our favorite things. If you folks, you see the banner here,
Yeah.
get involved with school. Talk about school.
Yeah, one of the things I love about school again is it's back to growing. I was gone for a month, so it didn't really grow, but I'm spending time in there. I will be going live this Sunday because I committed to it, put it on the calendar. I did not realize it was Easter until frankly yesterday, so I will be going live. I don't know if anybody will join, but I will be there. If you are, awesome. But again, I'm trying to go live in there so I can ask questions more often. I'm trying to go live at least twice a month. This month, I think will be 4 times. And I just think it's a nice way to give back. There's all this education, camaraderie, people posting wins. It is the place for the investor, right? You got to get in the right rooms with the right people doing the right things. And we foster an environment that is just that. And of course, the price point, less than 67 cents a day is, it's ridiculous, frankly.
What a great deal. Also, too, folks, proximity is power. Let me tell you, like being around Michael, being able to ask him questions the way I get to ask my own personal, hey, what about this? What about that? You get to do that in school, and you're going to be doing 2 lives a
A month
month,
at
is your
least two,
promise.
at least 2 lives a month
At
on
least
Sunday. Yeah, on Sunday.
on Sundays, and you usually do those early too. So you do
8,
them at
8 a.m. Yeah, I have a very strict schedule where I record content 8 to 11, 5 days a week. And now I've allocated 8 a.m. where I do not book any interviews. I go live somewhere. I typically will go live in school. Maybe once a month I'll just pick a day and go live in YouTube. But I've allocated 8 a.m. Sundays to go live somewhere with my community.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Folks, get involved in school, 20 bucks a month, pennies, 67
Pennies.
cents
Yeah.
a day. Crazy. Let's finish strong. So let's talk about opportunity, opportunity, opportunity. You have a theme, and you
Yep.
said the year 2025. Tell us what that theme is.
Yeah, I am more convinced than ever that 2025 is going to hurt for a lot of people, if not most people. However, if you are an investor and you are good at what you do, 2025 is going to go down as the year of the investor. It just is. We are going to see a lot of people who are making emotional decisions. We're going to see people selling at discounts. We're going to see distressed sales ramp. You're going to be able to do creative financing, seller financing, 90% loan to value. You're going to be, able to send mailers to notice of defaults. It's going to be the time where investors create good deals. I would tell investors to adopt my mindset for the rest of 25, and that is quite simply, let's go do the deal of the decade once a year. That's what I want you to be thinking about. We're not talking about good deals, great deals. We're talking about if we're going to move our chips into the middle of the table, it's the deal of the decade. And I am sitting in a home today that I consider my deal of the decade from last year, right? Several $100,000 off from a builder, 30-year money sub 5, credits, no lot fee, no upgrade fees. I beat this builder up hard. And I just want people to have that attitude, that mindset, that stick to itiveness, that follow up, that grit. Get after it. You make your money when you buy. You build legacy wealth in recessions. Go get your deal of the decade this year. I hope people get that. And if you don't know what that is, get in school. We'll talk about it.
I love it. Folks, the deal of a decade, the year of the investor. This is going to be your year. Folks, if you're not involved in school, get yourself involved. Take it for a test drive. 20 bucks. 20 bucks. Take it test drive for the next 30 days. Michael, happy Easter. Thank you for all that you do. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, brother. Happy Easter, everyone. Take care.